You're listening to the Author Stories Podcast, bringing you the story behind the stories and the storytellers.
Margaret White,
Terry Brooks,
Sheena Kamal,
Matthew Quick,
J.T. Ellison,
Walt D. Williams,
Brad Thor,
Corey, Dr. O,
Brandon Sanderson,
Robin Mom,
Ernest Klein, Jim Butcher,
Sherwin Harris.
Visit hankgarner.com for archives of all the shows. Today's guest is
Sara Pinborough.
At the end of the show, we're going to have an audiobook excerpt from Richard Fox's The Ember War. This audio clip is narrated by the one and only Luke Daniels. You're going to love this series. I love it so much. And Richard has been a great supporter and sponsor of the show, and we're going to show him some love. Listen to the audiobook excerpt. You're going to love it. And be sure to go to audible.com to purchase it. If you're not an Audible subscriber, you can get a free book just by signing up for a free trial at audibletrial.com/Hank. You get a 30-day free trial. You get the free book. If you decide to cancel your Audible subscription, you get to keep the free book, and it doesn't cost you a single penny. audibletrial.com/Hank, and listen after the show for the clip from Richard Fox. Writers, I have an amazing tool to tell you about. A revolutionary writing tool for planning stories. Campfire Pro is what novelists need to go from the seed of an idea to a detailed plan that's ready to be executed. Complete your character design, create a timeline, and track your world building all in one place with our downloadable desktop app for Mac and PC. Without the annoying subscription model so many apps are using today. Visit campfiretechnology.com for special holiday pricing on Campfire Pro today. Who Wants to Love a Billionaire? Billionaires in New York, Book 1 by Laura Burton. Do you have a favorite writer whose books are auto-buys for you? Wouldn't you love for readers to have you on their auto-buy list, then recommend your books to their friends and on social media? The good news is there are subtle things you can do, things that are nearly invisible to the reader, that will make your stories unputdownable. The Beyond 10 Days course from Victory Editing can help you get the most from your stories and help you build that relationship with readers through your writing. This course is full of awesome, and best of all, you don't have to fly across the country or put on pants. In this course, we'll focus on avoiding info dumps, dialogue mechanics, show versus tell in dialogue, carrying show versus tell forward to your narrative, deepening your point of view and strengthening your protagonist's voice, overwriting and how to avoid it. 10 hours of video content with text and audio downloads. Shine that diamond. Join me at the Beyond 10 Days course. Go to hankgarner.com and click the banner to sign up today. The Forsaken Mercenary series by Jonathan Yanez, a near-future thriller series, is now available on audible.com. The series that readers have loved is now available in your favorite format, audiobook format. The first book is called Drop Ship in the Forsaken Mercenary series. If they can't control him, they'll try and kill him. Daniel Hunt is the deadliest mercenary in the galaxy if he can just remember. 5 years before, he woke up with nothing more than his name. Now his present is on a violent collision with his past and the future of the galaxy. The Earth is dead. Humanity is taken to the Moon and Mars to have a chance. On what's left of Earth, primal gangs war for dominance. A rebel force will discover a weapon of unimaginable strength. The wealthy in the galaxy will do anything to possess. As Daniel unravels the origin of his past, he'll realize he's not the same weapon he once was. But does redemption exist for someone like him? For fans of Jason Bourne and the Weapon X program, this one's for you. Grab your hand cannon and start listening now. The Forsaken Mercenary series, Book 1 Drop Ship, available on audible.com now from Jonathan Yanez. Well, thanks for joining me again for the Author Stories Podcast, where I bring you the story behind the stories and the storytellers. Today, I'm really excited to have my friend Sara Pinborough on the show with me. She has a phenomenal new book. It's called Dead to Her. And guys, this is one of the best books I've read in a while. And you guys know that I love a good mystery thriller and a psychological suspense. And this one just hit all of the buttons for me. Welcome back to the show, Sarah.
Thank you. And that $500 will be in your PayPal account instantly. Thank you.
Oh, thank you. Thank you so much. Thank you. Sarah, it's been a couple of years since we talked. How have things been going?
They've been quite good, actually, because I think it was Behind Her Eyes was the last time. Yeah.
It was Behind Her Eyes. Yeah.
And that, of course, was a big turning point for my career and my bank balance, really. So yeah, it's been good. I had Cross Her Heart out last year, which was Sunday Times bestseller.
Yes, it was.
And then, of course, Dead to Her is coming out in America first. And then it's coming out in the UK in August because, as you know, it's quite a summary book. Plus, we've got, I think Behind Her Eyes Netflix series will be airing around July. So for us, obviously, it's good to get that out, and then we'll bring the next book out. So,
I can't wait.
Exciting.
There's been some really great, kind of limited series lately based on some great thrillers and suspense novels. We as the reading and consuming public just seem to be obsessed with these kind of stories right now.
Yeah, has already sold for TV.
How cool!
Yeah,
How cool
so
is
that I think there is a real thing for it, and I think we've kind of. I don't know about in America. I mean, I work a lot with TV companies over here, and obviously a lot of the time they're like, "Oh, can it be a returning series?" But I think with viewers, there's a real taste at the moment for sort of novelistic television. So you watch 8 episodes and that is the story. That's it done. 6 or 8 episodes. You're not coming back for, oh look, they've been reincarnated for the next series or whatever. So I mean, there have been some brilliant long running series, like obviously like Breaking Bad and things like that. But I think there is at the moment a taste for that sort of adapted thrillers.
Yeah.
Which is long way.
I think some of the appeal is the same appeal for a standalone psychological suspense because if you have a long running series, then inherently one of the challenges that you're going to have there is your main protagonist. We know that she may be bloodied and bruised and battered at the end of the book. But she's going to slink off somewhere, heal all up, and then be ready for a new challenge the next time it comes around. And invariably,
nothing really changes in their world. The story change. I mean, I think there's a real skill in series fiction. The people who are really successful at it, there's a real skill. I don't have that skill.
Well, you have to find some other way to build suspense and to make people care about what's going on.
Yeah, and it tends not to have that. It's a different kind of suspense almost. It's mystery rather than suspense, if you know what I mean.
It is. Yeah. And I guess that's probably what, and I know that production companies want to be able to extend things into perpetuity if they can, because, it gets easier when you already have a world built and a cast and, all of that stuff. I would imagine on, the next seasons just get easier and easier. But, I think that we're the viewing public and the reading public has kind of matured enough to, we can handle it. We can handle all the stakes.
There's two very different, I think streaming television is a bit more adventurous, and in England anyway, and then your terrestrial television, there's still a huge market for those series detectives, when you go to on TV, because there's a very people who are knackered, they've had their dinner, they just want an hour of something, they want to look forward to the next one next week, that kind of thing. There's a real market for that. But I think on streaming they're a bit more, okay, people will binge watch this, so let's, which you can't, it's harder to sustain the suspense when it's once a week, that, when I went to the read through of Behind Her Eyes, what I was listening for was, would I click to the next episode, which thankfully I would have done. And I knew the story, so that was quite a relief.
Right. That did help. My wife and I have canceled entire weekends, to binge through a series.
Oh, I love it. My ex-boyfriend took a little while to adjust. He'd be like, well, well, just watch 2 and turn it off. And I'm like, no.
No, it doesn't work that way.
We order a pizza. We get the dog walked early and we walk him later. But in the meantime, it's literally, we're just sofa surfing and watching.
So you were at the read through, I would assume the table read at the beginning of the production. How much influence and input have you gotten on the series?
Well, I'm quite pragmatic with these things I could have read the scripts earlier, but I didn't want to, because I thought if there's something I don't like, it's not my business, and nobody really likes the author going, excuse me. I took a very hefty paycheck when they started filming. So it's kind of like, you know what? They know what they're doing. But conversely, I know the producers quite well now because we're working on something else. So I have been quite, I went down, I was in part when I went down to set I was on set for a little bit and did a little cameo. And then I went down towards the end of filming because there was some press stuff happening. And so I know, and I know the producers really well because we're working on something else. So although I didn't have an influence per se, at the end of the read through I picked up a couple of things and just were tiny notes, which had I not known the producers I would not have given, but because I knew them I was like, hey Jess, what do you think? Maybe, tiny because Steve Lightfoot, who's written them, he knows what he's doing. So I do think when you sell that option, I was speaking to a guy at Topic Studios, the head of TV there, the other night on the phone, and we were talking about Dead to Her. And he'd said, were you not tempted to say that you would write it? Because, obviously I do screenwriting. And I was like, listen, my interest is in getting it made. And if I had 3 shows of my own to my, running, I'd say, okay, I could write this. But there's 2 things. Number one, I've already written it once. The idea of going down a rabbit hole 2 years rewriting it does not feel much to me, I'd rather write something original. And number 2, I'd rather they got a writer that, Netflix or Amazon or, HBO, whatever, are going to go, oh, wow, yeah, great. Let's have it. Because I just think I've written the book. Someone else can go and run with their vision and change what they want. And that's what, when you take the option money, I don't think you get to be precious after that point.
Well, and thank God we live in the time now where we can do these series. And, 10, 20 years ago, if a book got optioned, it was more than likely going to be a feature film. And they're going to take this massive novel that you put everything into, and you've got all of this, amazing detail and all that, and they're going to try to squish that down to an hour and 45 minutes. And that almost, and I say almost never turns out well.
Yeah, occasionally it does, but I always think a novella is the best movie length.
Or even a short story sometimes.
Short story can be great, especially horror, something that's quite sort of streamlined.
Exactly.
But, if you want something a bit more depth, I think a novella, when you start doing a whole novel, you've got to let them just rip it apart, because otherwise it's never going to work.
Well, and just knowing that the vehicle has changed has to help you as an author to trust the process more. They're going to have time to really let my story come alive.
Yeah, that's true. Personally, my sole thing is always when I was selling Behind Her Eyes, we had a lot of interest in it. And when I went to Left Bank, I literally was going as a courtesy. I think because it was just at the time, Gone Girl had been a big film. Girl on a Train wasn't out yet, but everyone was talking about it, the book was out, but the film wasn't out. And I remember in my head, I was thinking film, So when I went into Left Bank, I was a bit like, I'll just take the meeting out of politeness. But they had, Andy Harris, Suzanne Mackey, who obviously, Andy owns the company, and, they make The Crown together, and they had Jess, and everybody was in there. Their whole team was in there. And Andy Harris just said to me, look, I know you probably don't want television, but I'll tell you this. If I option this, I make it. And I looked at the table of people and I just thought, I'm selling it to them. I just trusted them. And then when I was at the read-through, he said to me, told you. And literally that book, 13 Minutes has been optioned for 3 years. And it's still at finalizing script stage, because obviously Josh Schwartz is very busy with other things. And in 2 years, which I think is pretty record breaking, the book came out 3 years, 2017, optioned it, I think maybe March 2017, and it's airing 6 parts in a 3 months time, 4 months time. That's pretty speedy going,
That is yeah. And in today's climate, it absolutely is. Wow.
So I trust them implicitly. Yeah.
Your new book, Dead to Her. What number is this book for you? You've written 112 novels at this point?
I do think maybe my well is running dry. I think it's number 26. Yeah, my first book came out December 2004.
Okay. So, you talked earlier about how Behind Her Eyes was this real turning point.
Yeah.
For you. What do you, looking back now, because when we talked about the book, it was brand new. It hadn't really, had a chance to find an audience yet because it was brand new. I think we talked probably on release day or very close to it.
Yeah.
But having the benefit of a couple of years hindsight now, what do you think, is the difference in this book? Why do you think this was a turning point for you?
It's, to me, it's like totally clear in that, number one, it was very much a commercial thriller, whereas obviously my previous books were like dystopian, crime, fantasy, fairy tales, horror. I was very much more in the quirky zone, sort of, I was still blending genres, but, in a much more defined space. And secondly, I was very lucky in that I think it was peak psychological thriller time. I mean, I know they're still selling, but it was very much peak. There was some really interesting, it was before it got sort of, I hate to use the word glutted because that makes it sound like they're really bad books, but everyone's writing psychological thrillers now, Whereas then I think we'd had Gonga, but I'd get on the train, people were starting to think, oh, this is a really interesting genre to work in. So more people were giving it a go, I think. But I think because I had that ending, it took this affair situation and then added this bonkers line through that, we had a big auction in America. So it sold, obviously Flatiron paid a lot of money for it and they got it on New York Times bestsellers. But in England, because my track record, people say don't talk about money, but I think it's interesting for other writers. So I was selling books in England for maybe 15,000, 20,000 a book. I think the highest I got before Behind Her Eyes was 25,000. And I was living, which isn't a huge amount. I mean, I know a lot of people who make a lot less, but I was working for mainstream publishers. I was working, full time. That's why I was writing 2 books a year, really. But so they couldn't offer me a huge amount of money because my sales didn't reflect a big amount of money. If I'd been a debut with that book, they'd have paid me loads of money in HarperCollins UK. But
isn't that crazy?
Said, we can only go, the money people will only let us go to, I think it was 35. Plus I got bonuses if paperback sold X amount, which I got my bonuses within like a week when the paperback came out. Which was amazing. But what they did, which I will forever be grateful to HarperCollins UK, because they loved the book, they gave it the marketing and promotion and the push as if they'd paid me $250,000 for that book. They all got behind it. It was a lead title. They got it in the supermarkets, which is gold dust in England. That's how you get on the top 10 bestsellers. They got it. They had big poster campaign. They had this great WTF that ending hashtag. So, I could be very arrogant and also stupid and say, oh, this book was just so much better. I don't think it's necessarily my best book. It was my most commercial book at that point. It had this real discussion point ending, and the teams on both sides of the Atlantic really gave it a good push. So what makes a successful book is how much the publisher puts behind it. I don't care what authors say. There's very few that a word of mouth hits. There's very few that happens to. Most books have to be, given that marketing push. So I was very, very lucky. And then that, and then obviously when they started filming and everything, I've been quite lucky. I mean, it's quite terrifying because it's when you're writing a book for like £15,000, no one really cares what you write. They give you a contract. You go, yeah, I'm going to write about this. They go, yeah, that sounds all right. Because they'll make money back. But when someone's paying you like $500,000 or something for a book, they're like, yeah, that idea's not going to work. Give us an idea. So it's like, yeah, you're stepping out of the zone here. Bring it back in. So you're like, okay. it's not, I mean, it's a very much a first world problem.
Right. Exactly.
But the fall is a lot, like it's a bigger fall if you get it wrong, if you know what I mean.
Right. Well, you got it right. And, I think everyone can agree to that. As a writer who had been working for quite a while and kind of found the niche that really connected with people, and obviously you were really good at it. When you were working on that book and then your subsequent books, did it feel like you had kind of found a new groove? What was it about writing these books that really connected with you and made you feel like this is really where I'm supposed to be?
Well, I mean, I wouldn't necessarily. I mean, I really enjoy writing it now, but I also think that out of few groups I like, and some of them I go to TV with. But for me, all my books, whatever the genre I was working in, has a mystery in it. All of them, down to the fairy tales, there was a mystery. They all have this kind of puzzle. I like to put the puzzle together, So when I started reading these sort of psychological thrillers, I suddenly realized that's what I was reading. And I thought, well, I really want to have a go at writing one. And I think it all kind of came together with getting a bit older, and I became much more interested in women's stories, if you know what I mean. So I think because I don't have children, so I kind of missed that whole, which is a lot easier in life if you're a woman, because I know female writers, that, raising kids, got a husband, and things that if it was a man, they would just run off and rent a garret for 2 weeks to finish a book. I think we'll start to do it a bit more now. They kind of look, honey, I'm making some money here. I'm going off to finish my book. But I think I'd looked at my real life friends, but not writing friends. My friends in my town, have jobs and husbands and kids, and I remember looking and thinking, God, I kind of had always been a bit dismissive of the marriage and babies thing. I think because it never was for me, so I never really kind of understood it. And I always thought, why would you do that? And now when I look, I think, God, they're getting the kids to school. They're going to work themselves. They're sorting all, they do all the stuff because the men are rubbish at what bag the kids need to take. And then they have to be sexy twice a week as well. And you're kind of like, how do you do all this? And then, we go away together sometimes on girls' weekends and, just getting older and hearing people's lives and dreams and things that they've missed out on, or, just all the stuff about, I think women's relationships with each other are very complex as well. I think we have really strong bonds, but we're also quite mistrustful sometimes, especially younger women. We don't trust each other very well when we're young because we're so conditioned to compete for male attention. But once you're over 40 and your ass is down at the back of your kneecaps, you don't care about that so much, I'm just like, I can't be bothered. And God wasted so much time just having each other's back when we were 21, we were thinking about all the wrong things. So that turned into a bit of a feminist rant. But I have a little
girl
bit,
power.
But I do look, and I think women sometimes feel very isolated, especially as you get older. I think we feel aging more than men because of our body change. And, we literally have menstrual eyes that we're older in. So I think I just wanted to play with women's stories. And because I am essentially lazy as a writer, a researcher, I didn't want to do a detective fiction because I don't know how they do stuff. So I actually thought, the books I love are books like Rebecca, where you've got that claustrophobic, what's going on, who do I trust here? So those have always appealed to me. And I just like sleight of hand books, where you can pull the rug out from people.
Well, one thing that I love about Dead to Her, the new book, and Behind Us, is that it really, your books just play right up to the line of, where suspense ends and horror almost comes in. And these are not horror books, but you have a way of making me feel uncomfortable for long periods of time where I walk out of my room after reading and I'm distrustful of everyone.
My friend, there's a TV presenter in England called Richard Osman, who's very big on the TV here, and he's just written a crime novel actually that's coming out later this year called The Thursday Murder Club, which is a really lovely book. It's very clever and it's
a great title
but
too.
He read Dead to Her and he called it Dallas meets Tales of the Unexpected. And I thought that was a really good comparison.
That's great that he nailed that.
Fun. Write a fun read, which is dark. Yeah. And, my books tend to be love or hate. Like some people will go, ugh, these people are all atrocious. I quite like them, even though they are atrocious. See, I think it's fine for your characters to be awful people as long as they like themselves. I'd rather read about an awful person who quite likes themselves than a really nice person who's full of self-loathing.
Well, and we all have little awful things about ourselves.
I think we're all awful under the skin.
We are. And the fact that we can interact with each other and have healthy families and healthy friendships and all that is a testament to something. I don't know, but because we're all kind of awful.
Yeah, we're all very but it's like, everyone has their prejudices. However much you shouldn't, and however much your prejudice, we've all got inherent prejudices that have been part of our upbringing or conditioning. You have to fight against, and we're all 3 meals away from revolution, and we're it's nice. It's easy to be nice when you're sitting in a house with electricity and you've got money in the bank and you've got food in the fridge, and But I think that most people, if people could see our inner monologues, I also think we're horrible to us. There's no one meaner than me. But, so I quite like that, which is why I think I wanted to set it in Savannah, which I love, because it has this real politeness. The whole city has a politeness, even though there's, definitely people there with very different political views to me in some parts. But there is a politeness that runs through that. I mean, obviously, I don't live in Savannah, so I'm sure there's lots more. But from the, someone who's only been a visitor, I loved it. I thought I was going to love New Orleans more, but I didn't. When I got to Savannah, I thought, oh my God, I could totally get a house here. I like that. I'm quite an old fashioned person. And, although people always say, oh, Sarah's this or that or the other, actually in my heart of hearts, I like a polite life, I like a nice, quiet life. And I'd also been to Sea Island, the resort in Georgia, which is lovely. And I'd gone to do a writing thing there. And that was very high society Southern. I mean, they were really great people. There was one night, they had a disco night on or something. It was a Downton Abbey night. And they stopped the music. And it was brilliant. It was like everyone, all women are only like half a bottle of wine away from bonding. Because there were these women with perfectly coiffured sort of Southern hair, dripping in diamonds. There's me in my kind of secondhand dress. And I think this was before Behind Her Eyes had come out. And there was a friend of mine, and we were all just mucking around on the dance floor. And when the music stopped, these women were like, okay, they won't play it anymore because, there's residents sleeping. But what about if I've got a room. Has anyone got an iPod speaker? I've got some wine. And it was brilliant. There are these people that have flown in, like women in their sort of late 50s in private jets. And we're suddenly all like, where can we continue the party? So, but obviously when you're turning this into fiction, they can't all be nice, So, but I think I've kind of, I don't think there's any whole swathe of society in this book that comes across. I think I think there's good people and bad people in all elements of the book.
Sure.
Hopefully.
Well, what came first for you? Was it Marcie? Was it this idea of this culture? Did the story just kind of build itself out of that? When you're first starting to dream about this book, how does it come alive to you?
I had sold. It's a bit, there was nothing overly creative in it to a certain extent. In that was sold Cross the Heart to William Morrow, and they said, oh, what are you doing next? And I literally had nothing. But I wanted to write something about swingers, which is not in to her, obviously. But I wanted to write something set in America, and I had originally thought, oh, maybe Miami, because that's kind of glam. And then I thought, yeah, but if people were swingers in Miami, no one would care,
Right.
And then obviously, my ideas, they start off enormous and then I narrow it. And then I thought, no, swingers, that's quite a niche kind of market. And I'm not a singer, so that would, I'm not really sure I went on those websites to research, So,
but there's a story. So yeah.
Pardon?
There's a psychological suspense waiting to be written.
I know.
Out
I
of that.
In my notebook. Every time I come to plan a book, I put swingers ? Because I think there's so much relationship stuff in there that where do you even begin? But so then I was like, oh, and then I'd been to Savannah. And I thought when I was there, I was like, oh, I really would love to write something set here. And then I suddenly thought, oh my God, that would be perfect for an affair situation or something. And then I thought Second Wives. I thought it's a really interesting dynamic because you often come in, it's like being the new girlfriend when you walk into a set of friends that have known each other 20 years. You forget they have all that history. You don't know it. It doesn't exist. It's pre-you. and you forget that the things that happen in that history can have long running effects, you know. And I think especially second wives, we've got one who's the first wife is dead, the other one, the first wife, is very much alive, and all the stuff that it's weird how second wives can be the first wives, even if the husband's left the first wife for the second wife. You know, this kind of weird women comparing with each other dynamic. So I did, and then I thought, well, if I make these second wives not of the set, as it were, you know, and obviously then I thought the best way for me to have one of these second wives is to be English. You know, one of the second wives is, you know, I bring my Englishness into the book that way. So, yeah, it was more about second wives. I think Behind Her Eyes was a fun write and a fun read, and Cross Heart was a much darker book and much more serious subject matter. But I wanted to write something fun. I mean, I like to write an entertaining book. You know, I think there's entertainment is much maligned, you know, where it will put down. And I think there's nothing better than picking up a book and just sinking into it for a few hours and closing the pages with a smile and thinking, oh, that was good. You know, it doesn't have to be highbrow literature, you know. So for me, I want to write book people, you know, my friends who work away, you know, they get into bed, they just want to lose themselves in another world for a couple of hours, go to sleep, you know. And so that's what I wanted to do. I wanted to be set dark and fun. And I you know, I know that some people don't. I mean, doesn't have the massive weirdness that Behind Her Eyes had in it, but there are hints of. There's a flavour of dark supernatural in it, you know, which I know some people would be happy if I left out, but I do think it's just part of me to put something uneasy in there, and people are very susceptible to it. You know?
Well, yeah, and that's what I was talking about earlier, that you really play up to the borders of genre. And really, and you know, it really keeps us guessing because, you know, no matter how wonderful the book is, when there are 40,000 suspense thrillers out there tends to be a formula that evolves in that. And sometimes you can see things coming. Well, not with you, because you'll just throw every tool in your box at us, and we're like, oh crap, where did that come from? Do you think about those things when you're writing? Like,
well, it was the one difficult thing with Behind Her Eyes was how do you follow that, you know? And then I was a bit like, you know what? The thing that I've always done is do something a little bit different. So Cross Her Heart was very different to Behind Her Eyes. Dead to Her is different to both of them. It probably sits closer in a box with Behind Her Eyes than it does Cross Her Heart. But my editor said to me, the problem is, Harry, you know, every time you do something different. And I thought, hang on, I thought I was staying in my sandpit now. You know, to me, they're all quite similar because they're successful. But then I thought, actually, you know, I don't want to be formulaic. I mean, obviously they are slightly formulaic. They're suspense, you know. So I do like to play with people. And even if the supernatural isn't real, or whether it is real, or I like the thriller has to play out like thriller. You know, there's no kind of, you know, everything is seeded, everything, the clues are there. It has to be discovered like a thriller, you know. So I kind of, but I love I find it. I was reading something. There's a procrastination site called Mysterious.org, I think it's called, and it's brilliant. It collates all these weird and wonderful news articles from around the world. And I was reading one yesterday about this man who he was found kneeling up in his bath and surrounded by all these occult symbols and stuff. And he'd literally been stopped in the street about a month before by this woman, refused to buy something off her, you know, like some kind of witchy woman. And she said she placed a curse on him. And it played on his mind to the point of it drove him mad. And he died. He killed himself. And well, actually, sometimes our minds are fragile, you know, and things like that. You know, like I don't believe in tarot cards. I wouldn't have my reading done. Do you know what I mean? So I quite like that if you're going to have a suspense novel where people are already mistrustful and the world is not quite as it seems, if you can play a little bit more with that, then you're kind of like, oh, okay. You know, even for the characters, even if the world is as it is, the characters don't know quite what's, you know, you can play with the characters' fears. And yeah, so I just kind of like to do something a bit different. And some people don't like it, but some people do. So that's the payoff, you know.
Well, and then you get to play with the idea, was this real, you know, occult magic?
Yeah.
Was it the power of suggestion and she just got in his head, you know? And that's, to me, that's even more scary than the occult magic.
You've literally just summed up what I was trying to say in like my 15-minute waffle. But yeah, the power of suggestion is what I like to play with.
Yeah, and that's more scary. The fact that someone could place these things and we drive ourselves mad.
Yeah.
And that's more scary than an outside force doing that.
Yeah.
I think.
Yeah, totally.
Yeah. So, tell us kind of what the setup for this book. Dead to Her. We've got the second wife idea. We've got Savannah. Who are these characters and how do we meet them?
So we start with, there's a little prologue which has a little clue about, there's a note being written that says what happened to Johnny. So we know that, that kind of thriller setup, there's a little secret there. But then we open at a party in Savannah, and we're in the viewpoint of this woman called Marcie Maddox, who actually is a real woman who works at Sea Island, and her husband is called Jason. But I've used her names. So Marcie is the younger second wife to Jason Maddox, who's a lawyer, very socially aspirational. His family had a little crumble about 20 years ago because his dad had done bad stuff in the company, but he's kind of got with friends, and it's just sort of boss and business partner, best friend, William, who's older. It's at his house, and he's just come back from a trip to Europe after his wife died, and he turns up with a wife called Keisha, who is a young black Englishwoman, which obviously everyone at work, because he's like 60 something, but obviously very wealthy. And it's kind of how these two women, Marcie's nose is straight out of joint because she's been the hot younger second wife, and that's what she has in this group. They're all in their 50s, and what she has is that she's young and beautiful now she's in her 30s. She's become sort of absorbed in this claustrophobic life. When you think you're going to get, like the Gilded Cage, she thought she was marrying this, she's come from a poor background, she thought she was marrying, into going to live a fairy tale life, and actually found that it's not such a fairy tale, and now there's Keisha turned up. So they have this rivalry, and then obviously there is crime, and it's really about these lives that get run back through families, and comeuppances. There's a lot of comeuppances in it.
I love the comeuppances.
Thank you.
Yeah. This book is so.
It's a bit
I think I read this book. I got it, from your publicist a couple of months ago, and I'm always juggling about 10 books for show prep and then trying to read for pleasure to
I know what you
keep
mean.
yourself sane.
Proofs out of my ears.
And I got the book and I sat down in my big fluffy reading chair, and I think like 6 hours later I got up and I was like, oh my God, this is crazy, and I love it. And this when folks get their hands on this, they need to chalk off some time.
What I wanted to do was kind of write an 80s bonkbuster in a suspense novel.
Yes.
Do you know what I mean? I wanted to play with that genre because I used to love those books.
Yes.
And you don't see them so much anymore, and they always had a bit of a mystery in them. And they always, and they always had these women that were kind of feisty, and I hate that word feisty, you know what I mean? They were gorgeous, and, because I'm not, I literally walk, I don't know if you have Primark in America. A bit like Target, I guess, but cheaper.
Yeah.
It's really cheap.
Gotcha.
And my days are spent in Primark jogging bottoms, running bottoms, sweatpants in America, and they will stay on for like 3 days. Because I literally get up, walk my dog, come home, work, maybe do a bit of exercise, have a shower. So I literally am so far from any of the women in my books, I basically leave the house looking like a homeless tramp. but I love about those women, that have perfect nails, perfect hair, and can get under the skin. So I kind of wanted to write, to couch a suspense thriller in this bonkbuster vibe, rich people, which some people wouldn't like, but I'm hoping people will go with the ride.
Yeah. Well, I love this book so much. I know everyone else too. There's going to be links to it in the show notes of this episode. Dead to Her, when you're hearing this, is available everywhere in hardcover, audiobook, Kindle edition.
And we've got. I'm not sure I'm supposed to say, but I think it'll be out by then. So I'm going to say anyway. We're like Hudson's Book of the Month thing. So Hudson's have their own special edition of it, and I've written a letter on the inside of that one as well.
Ooh, I love it. I love it.
Excited about that.
Sarah, if people are just learning about you and want to dig into all the great stuff that you do, is there a place they can connect with you online?
Oh, Twitter. I've got a really difficult handle. It's just my name. So it's at Sara Pinborough. That's much the easiest way to come and listen to my drivel and look at my dog pictures.
Excellent. We'll link it up there, and we'll send everyone to see you. Sarah, thank you so much for taking time to come back on the show. I'm a huge fan. I love everything you're doing.
Well, thank you so much.
Stay tuned now for an audiobook excerpt from Richard Fox's The Ember War.
The near future. Humanity's only hope of survival entered the solar system at nearly the speed of light. The probe slowed as the sun's heliosphere disrupted the graviton wave it rode in on from the abyss of deep space. Awakened by the sudden deceleration, the probe absorbed the electromagnetic spectrum utilized by its target species and assessed the technological sophistication of the sole sentient species on Earth. The probe adjusted its course to take it into the system's primary. If the humans couldn't survive, with its help, what was to come, then the probe would annihilate itself. There would be no trace of it for the enemy, and no chance of humanity's existence beyond the time it had until the enemy arrived. The probe analyzed filed patents, military expenditures, birth rates, mathematical advancement, and space exploration. The first assessment fell within the margin of error of survival and extinction for humanity. The probe's programming allowed for limited, autonomous decision-making, choice being a rare luxury for the probe's class of artificial intelligence. The probe found itself in a position to choose between ending its mission in the sun's fire and a mathematically improbable defense of humanity, and the potential compromise of its much larger mission. Given the rare opportunity to make its own decision, the probe opted to dither. In the week it took to pass into Jupiter's orbit, the probe took in more data. It scoured the internet for factors to add to the assessment, but the assessment remained the same. Unlikely, but possible. By the time it shot past Mars, the probe still hadn't made a decision. As the time to adjust course for Earth or continue into the sun approached, the probe conducted a final scan of cloud storage servers for any new information, and found something interesting. While the new information made only a negligible impact on the assessment, the probe adjusted course to Earth. It hadn't traveled all this way for nothing. In the desert south of Phoenix, Arizona, it landed with no more fanfare than a slight thump and a few startled cows. Then it broke into the local cell network and made a call. Marcie awoke to his phone ringing at max volume, playing a pop ditty that he hated with vehemence. He rolled off the mattress that lay on the floor and crawled on his hands and knees to where his cell was recharging. His roommate, who paid the majority of their rent and got to sleep on an actual bed, grumbled and let off a slew of slurred insults. Mark reached his cell and slapped at it until the offending music ended. He blinked sleep from his eyes and tried to focus on the caller's name on the screen. The only people who'd call at this ungodly hour were his family in Basque country, or maybe Jessica in his applied robotics course wanted a late-night study break. The name on the screen was Answer Me. He closed an eye and reread the name. It was way too early, or too late, depending on one's point of view, for this nonsense. He turned the ringer off and went back to bed. Sleep was about to claim him when the phone rang again, just as loudly as last time, but now with a disco anthem. "Seriously?" his roommate slurred. Mark declined the call and powered the phone off. He flopped back on his bed and curled into his blanket. To hell with my first class, he thought. Arizona State University had a lax attendance policy, one which he'd abused for nights like this. The cell erupted with big band music. Mark took his head out from beneath the covers and looked at his phone like it was a thing possessed. The phone vibrated so hard that it practically danced a jig on the floor, and the screen flashed "Answer Me" over and over again as music blared. "Dude," said his roommate, now sitting up in his bed. Mark swiped the phone off the charging cord, and the music stopped. The caller's name undulated with a rainbow of colors, and an arrow appeared on the screen, pointing to the button he had to press to answer the call. When did I get this app? He thought. Mark sighed and left the bedroom, meandering into the hallway bathroom with the grace of a zombie. The battered mattress he slept on played hell with his back and left him stiff every morning. Dropping his boxers, he took a seat on the toilet and answered the call, determined to return this caller's civility with some interesting background noise. "What?" he murmured. "Mark Ibarra. I need to see you." The voice was mechanical, asexual in its monotone. "Do you have any friggin' idea what time it is? Wait, who the hell is this?" "You must come to me immediately. We must discuss the mathematical proof you have stored in document title This Can't Be Right, .doc." Mark shot to his feet. The boxers around his ankles tripped him up, and he stumbled out of the bathroom and fell against the wall. His elbow punched a hole in the drywall, and the cell clattered to the floor. He scooped the phone back up and struggled to breathe as a sudden asthma attack came over him. How? He couldn't finish his question until he found his inhaler in the kitchen, mere steps away in the tiny apartment. He took a deep breath from the inhaler and felt the tightness leave his lungs. That someone knew of his proof was impossible. He'd finished it earlier that night and had encrypted it several times before loading it into a cloud file that shouldn't have been linked to him in any way. "How do you know about that?" he asked. "You must come to me immediately. There is little time. Look at your screen," the robotic voice said. His screen changed to a map program, displaying a pin in an open field just off the highway, connecting Phoenix to the suburb of Maricopa. "Come. Now." Mark grabbed his keys. An hour later, his jeans ripped from scaling a barbed wire fence, Mark was surrounded by desert scrub. The blue of the morning rose behind him, where his beat-up Honda waited on the side of the highway. With his cell to his ear, Mark stopped and looked around before deciding how to continue. Spiked ocotillo plants looked a lot like benign mesquite trees in the darkness. A Native American casino in the distance served as his North Star, helping him keep his bearings. "You're not out here, are you? I'm being punked, aren't I?" he asked the mysterious caller. "You are 9.26 meters to my east-southeast. Punk, decayed wood, used as tinder. Are you on fire?" the caller said. Mark rolled his eyes. This wasn't the first time the caller had used the non-standard meanings of words during what passed as conversation between the two. Mark had tried to get the caller to explain how he knew about his theorem and why they had to meet in the middle of the desert. The caller had refused to say anything. He would only reiterate that Mark had to come quickly to see him, chiding him every time Mark deviated from the provided driving directions. "If you're so close, why can't I see you?" he asked. He took a few steps in what he thought was a northwesterly direction and squished into a cow patty.